I am a 30 years old male, and I got married 2 weeks ago. I was married before, but it ended after I found out that my older brother Thomas, 34 years old, got involved with my first wife. It was devastating because we were close and had a great relationship. I also helped him so much while he was struggling, and seeing how he repaid me hurts to this very day. I stopped talking to him, and Mom and Dad forced me to keep it a secret, and because I was too weak to argue with them, I just kept my own distance. Then I met my now wife. My family loved and embraced her as their own. Mom and Dad treat her like a queen, which helped repair and solidified my relationship with them. However, as the wedding was approaching, they told me they expected me to invite Thomas. I of course refused, but they kept guilting me about what the relatives and other guests would think and say when they don't see Thomas there. I fought with them about it till the day of the wedding. Turned out they'd invited him behind my back, but I found out and stopped them in time. They came to the wedding looking pissed, asking what we were going to tell people when they ask about Thomas. I told them I'd take care of it. And what I did was take a moment while everyone was paying attention, grabbed the mic and flat out announced this and said, "The reason I didn't invite Thomas to my wedding is because I was worried he'd steal my now wife just like he stole the first one." I said it playfully to not make it sound so tense, but most of the guests looked shocked and started mumbling. Then it went awkwardly quiet for a moment. Then we moved on, but I saw Mom and Dad walk out while looking at me grudgingly. Later they started lashing out about how I just exposed Thomas and caused him to be shunned by the family in the most hideous of ways. I told them that I already said I didn't want him there, yet they tried to push him on me repeatedly, saying, "What are people going to say?" So I told them the reason why he wasn't there in a playful way, but they, the guests, still got the message. Mom started yelling about how everyone will now look down on and shun Thomas. She called me pathetic and cruel for still punishing him and gradually ruining his life despite him apologizing and trying to reconcile. But in my opinion, some things are just unforgivable. We've been on horrible terms since then. My wife said at least now they're off my back about what people would say about not inviting him. Background about my sister. 2 years ago, my sister was killed in a car accident. She was riding with a friend to the mall, the friend's parent was driving, and teenage boy plowed through a red light while texting on his phone and hit the car my sister, Carrie, was in. Carrie was killed instantly, and her friend, June, was in a coma for 3 weeks before her parents took her off life support. When Carrie passed, I was devastated and angry and just not in a good place. Carrie and I had been extremely close. Despite a 7-year age gap between us, we enjoyed a lot of the same shows. We went to concerts together. We volunteered together, and I took it upon myself to guide Carrie like any big sister would do. Our parents were extremely busy with work most days, and Carrie and I would often cook together and do crafts when we weren't too busy with school work. Carrie wanted to be a NICU nurse when she grew up, and I helped her find a volunteer position at a local hospital to help get her gain some experience being around patients. In short, Carrie was my sister and best friend, and when she passed, I was a mess. The last craft Carrie and I made together was a set of candles. We bought the wax at a local craft store, and we both made each other a candle and decorated the jar it was in. That was the day before she was killed. At her funeral, Carrie was buried with the candle I made her. The candle Carrie made me sits on my desk next to my favorite picture of her and I together at the beach. Or it did, until last week. Background about my boyfriend. I met my boyfriend about 1.5 years ago, about 6 months after Carrie passed. I wasn't looking for a relationship, I was still grieving my sister's death. But Eugene came along, and it was love at first sight. He was extremely supportive, let me cry on him when I needed to, didn't push me into getting over grieving or anything. He was extremely gentleman about everything and very, very patient. After 6 months of seeing each other pretty regularly, we made it official. Eugene came into my life at a very low point, and he has always been very respectful of sentiments I keep from my sister. Never asking me to take them down, always giving me space when I needed to cry. Eugene, along with most, if not all, of my friends and family know about Carrie's candle. There was a point after she died where I would take the candle with me everywhere out of fear that someone might light it, or steal it, or who knows what. The point is, that candle was and still is a very important part of my life and something that my sister made for me and me alone. When Eugene and I moved in together about 4 months ago, I packed away most of the reminders of my sister and put out the candle and picture on my desk. I felt that this was a huge step because when I'd lived just by myself I had pictures everywhere and a few knickknacks laying around from my sister. I wanted to make Eugene and I's home our home with just a small part of my sister there. Eugene understood and was very supportive. Last week, we had a massive winter storm that knocked out power. We didn't have power for 3+ days. The power was knocked out at Eugene and I's house while I was at work, which did not lose power. Eugene texted me that he was going to light some candles and try and get a generator, so we could have some for of power or at least be able to charge our phones / use lights / etc. Now, we have probably 30+ candles in our house. I am a huge fan of sales, and when Bath & Body Works has a candle sale, I like to stock up and get a range of scents. We have candles scattered all over our house. In the room where my desk is, there are no candles aside from the one Carrie made me. None at all, and there never has been. This room is also downstairs, where Eugene doesn't spend a lot of time. His desk is upstairs. When I arrived home from work last week, I noticed a bunch of candles burning in our living room, safely. Always monitored and not near anything that could ignite. One of these candles was the candle that Carrie had made me. I burst into tears, and when Eugene heard me crying he came out from the bedroom, where he was lighting more candles, and asked what was wrong. I was a wreck and couldn't get any words out. When he tried to calm me down, I shoved past him and locked myself in the room where my desk was and just cried. I don't know how he could be so stupid. He knew, and I thought he understood how sentimental the candle was and how much I cherished having a candle that my now deceased sister had spent time making with me just a day before she was killed. I haven't been able to speak to Eugene since it happened, Tuesday of last week. He has tried to explain why he did it, because he needed candles to be able to see, but I just can't wrap my head around it. He hadn't gotten into the large candle stash I have upstairs right by the living room where Carrie's candle was, but went downstairs, out of the way to grab the most sentimental, cherished item I have. The candle was burning most of the day while I was at work and is now melted and pretty much gone. I do still have the jar it was in, but I can't look at it without bursting into tears. Eugene says it was an accident, but I just don't believe that. He said he was getting around to lighting the candle surplus we have upstairs, but just hadn't gotten there yet. After being home 6 hours alone with no power, I am heartbroken and feel like this is a major slap in the face. I feel disrespected. I feel like he disrespected my sister. I just don't know what to do. I don't feel like I can forgive him for this. Been with Stephanie for a little over 3 years. More or less relationship is good. She tends to be way overdramatic when we fight, which isn't often. But I can usually talk her down and things work out. When Stephanie and I first started dating, she mentioned a few times in kind of a mysterious, I thought it was attention seeking, still do, way that she had some kind of mental illness or mental health struggle. Eventually, probably 2 or 3 months in, she came out and told me in a really serious conversation that she has body dysmorphia and thinks she's obese and hates herself for it. Now let me be clear, I love her the way she is, wouldn't change a thing. I don't mind her weight whatsoever. But even when she said it initially, I almost thought it was a joke. Stephanie is obese. I'm not good at guessing weight and she's never told me her weight, but I know she's 5 feet 4 inches and a size 22 in pants. She's by all standards obese. I don't mind it at all. I'm attracted to her. I think she's beautiful. I would never ask her to change a thing. It didn't come up again for a while, but last fall she took a psychology course for her college degree and they talked about mental illness, and it came back up. She came in one night almost happy, in a weird way, saying that she understands everything that's wrong with her because they talked about BD in class and it all makes sense. She has never been diagnosed by a medical professional and can't see a doctor for lack of health insurance. Ever since then, she talks about it a lot. I'm not one to poke at people just to poke, so I just let it be. But she talks about it all the time. She blames arguments we have on her BD. She uses it as an excuse to eat poorly and not take care of herself. Because she is straight up convinced that she is smaller than she is and that the person she sees in the mirror is a dysmorphic situation. She is part of an online BD support group and talks openly to me about how she's met people who finally understand her. And she gives them advice and guidance based on her struggle with BD. She's pointed to actresses like Mindy Kaling and compared the actress's body to her actual body versus BD body. And says it's nice to see herself represented on screen. No offense intended to my girlfriend, but that's not her body type. She is much bigger than that. I'm getting to the point where I don't know what to do. She uses it as an excuse for all her behavior. I honestly don't know if she truly thinks she has BD or if she just uses it to justify herself. When we first moved in together, she would cover all the sizes on the tags of her clothes with Sharpie so I wouldn't see them. She's since stopped doing that, or only does it when she remembers. But it made me think she might be aware of her size and just tries to pretend she has BD so no one can talk to her about it. I know this is a weird situation. I'd like to get her or us into counseling, but she doesn't have insurance and goes to a community college that doesn't offer student mental health services. I'm not sure what to do. My husband and I have been married for 21 years. We have 2 adult children, one is in college out of state and the other is in the Navy. When we first got married, my husband was in Navy, and we spent the first 10 years of our marriage moving from place to place, wherever his new duty station was. I found it hard to make friends, and I could not keep a job, so I made a difficult decision and decided to be a som. When he got out of the Navy 11 years ago, he took a job and we moved. 3 years in, he got offered a job in another part of the company, however, it was in another state, so we moved again. We stayed there for 6 years. I went back to college and got my degree and began looking for work. I found a job I liked in my field, and 6 months into working, he said he was offered a job with a new company and wanted to take it. But that would mean we would be moving almost 2,000 miles from where we were in a new state. I reluctantly agreed because the new state would have more job opportunities for me and we would be closer to our family, which is something that we have not had in many years. Last night my husband came up to me and said that there was a job opening in his company and he wanted to apply for it. It would mean a pay raise and better hours, but the caveat would be that we have to move again. We have been living in our new state for 3 years. I love it here. I have an amazing job and I am making great money. I finally have friends and am able to socialize. I told him that I am not moving again. Anytime we have to move, he always leaves first and I end up being responsible for selling / packing the house. And I am not doing that again. Our son's college is only 2 hours from here. We can see him twice a month. If we move, that means we would have at least a day's drive and would only be able to do that once or twice a year. Now my husband is upset with me and guilt-tripping me because he claims I do not support him. I told him that was BS because I spent most of my life moving from place to support his career. He told me that I am selfish and he is just trying to provide for us. I told him that we are more than comfortable where we are now, and that if he truly wants to take the job, he will be going alone. My husband and I have been together since I was 15 and he was 17. He joined the Navy right after graduation from high school when he was 18 and I was 16, but had to wait 2 years before we could marry. He works for a company that has plants in 15 states. He is currently in middle management, but if he wants to advance his career further, he would need to go to another plant out of state. Financially, we are more than comfortable. We do not need any more money. My son plans to stay in the place he is after college. We have a great relationship with him and he comes home 1 time a month and we see him 1 time a month. My other son comes home on leave whenever he can and stays with us. We are very close to both of the boys. I talked to my husband again tonight and told him quite firmly that moving again was not an option for me. The area he wants to move has very little jobs in my field and specialty in that area, and I would need to commute more than an hour one way for a job versus the 20 minutes I have here. We are sandwiched between 2 major cities, and if we move we would be an hour from the most major city. I would also have to take a massive pay cut and work a menial job to build a new network to find employment in my field. My husband is disappointed in me for not wanting to leave. He left to stay with a friend because he needs to think. He doesn't understand why I would force him to turn down an opportunity to advance his career further. I told him to take all the time he needs, but I am not moving again. I said I would revisit the possibility when I am ready for retirement in 15 years, but no sooner.